I'm not saying this correctly. Hang on. How do I close this out without sounding like a fucking asshole? Hang on.
Just sound like one. What is this show for?
What show is this? Welcome back, marketing nerds of the world. It's time for another episode of HAMYAW. And today we want to talk about the difference between vulnerability and what I think Brene Brown calls inappropriate disclosure. You've heard us drop this term a time or two on the show, mostly because Margot needs to remind me what it is, because I'm always reaching for it. Because especially now, with the way the world as it is, there's been a lot of conversations about how much people are struggling. There have been conversations about how difficult it has been with the various challenges due to COVID, due to childcare, due to, lowered sales, due to business being a struggle, life being a struggle, all of these bits and pieces. And we understand that there's a lot of catharsis in sharing your pain on social media, in getting that feedback, in sharing that transparency, in feeling authentic in this way. However, y'all knew there was a however, sometimes oversharing can be a little detrimental for your results. And we want to talk about why. We want to talk about what the difference is between vulnerability, TM, and inappropriate disclosure. And we have so much to discuss today. Margot, talk to me about your relationship to social media catharsis.
I think there's a really thin line because of the explosion of content and social media and sort of the democratization of distribution without gatekeepers, that we have really confused the line between I'm a brand and a personality and I run a business. Because before, Chrissy Teigen's a really good example of someone who she shares a lot. She self-discloses a lot. Some people think it's inappropriate. Some people think it isn't, but she's not ever going in for a sell on the thing she is disclosing to you, right? She's disclosing something separate, or it's there is relevance there. If you guys have been following social media, you probably saw that Chrissy and John Legend lost a baby, and she just posted no words with a picture of herself, and then she ghosted. Yeah. So you can share with people what's going on in your personal life, but not let them in. There's boundaries on what you are, who is your support system. And I think the failure happens when you start to think that your audience are your friends, and you start to think that your audience is part of your support system. Our support system is a small, tiny, tiny group of people who've earned the right to hear your story. That's a Brene quote, right? So when we talk about being vulnerable, when we talk about the courage to show up, that doesn't mean to spill your guts inappropriately in inopportune times when no one asked. And I think it's especially true during a pandemic when we're all feeling really siloed, really isolated, very hungry for connection. And we have it is real connection with your audience. But the relationship is different in the same way, your relationship with your husband is going to be different than your relationship with your kids or your mom. We show up in different ways and they're all authentic.
Yeah. I love that you brought up this vulnerability piece as well, because I think it's very, that it can feel good to have that response. We talked about this a little bit in our Should You Be Yourself Online episode, I want to say a year and a half ago. It's a great episode. Go check it out, folks. Wherever. We never include the stickers, but we always point. So just go find it wherever you can. But I think that where part of the problem is that we get validation when we overshare on social media, often from the people who follow us, because they're glad to know that we're human. It's a relief to know that we're struggling too. Maybe they're going through the same thing. And that's actually, I think, a really powerful moment of connection. But it's possible to misread that as something that people need to know about, or that is something you should be sharing about more often. I think transparency has a time and place, but I think where it gets tricky is because in business as we run it, in the service provider industry, in the personal brand industry, it's your personality and your skill set, right? You're selling both, you're selling yourself, and no industry kind of has this problem. But can you imagine if your doctor walked in on your appointment being like, oh my God, I couldn't stop crying last night. It's been really, really hard. And I really haven't slept.
Hands shaking.
Well, my hands shaking. My husband and I
having
had a
that
huge
twitch
fight
again
before I got here. The stain on my shirt is cereal from my toddler threw on me. I haven't had time to change and I stink and I haven't showered.
I have a headache.
How are you today? How can I help?
I'm gonna,
you're gonna be like,
now.
You're gonna be like, could you like go home and nap and we can like reschedule? I think that where it's so important to draw this line is because if you are selling your skills, if you're an authority and expert, and you're also a personal brand, it is difficult for people to unsee things about you. When it comes time to sell, be like, join my program, join this. This is an industry where the struggle is really key. It's an unusual struggle, but it's very common. So I think it's really important for all of us to figure out what the line is for ourselves, because it's really hard to go from, I am struggling, everything sucks, I've cried every day for a month, into buy my stuff.
Yep.
It just gets weird between those spaces.
I want to channel our inner Michelle Warner. If you guys don't follow her, you should check her out, friend of the show. But her big mantra is like sequencing. And I do think a lot of this is a question of timing. Like, you can share things, but not right now. The struggle in terms of a sales pitch is really helpful in retrospect, right? You want to sell that you've overcome the struggle. You don't need to share it while you're in it. But like, giant caveat, right? Like, there are qualitative differences. If your brand is, I am trying to learn cooking and I really suck at it. So come with me on my journey as I suck at cooking and watch me learn. Okay, fine. Be vulnerable about your cooking and your feelings and all the things that are happening, but that's part of the positioning. But if you're like, I'm the chef and you're going to get these amazing recipes and I went to this great school, and then you spend all of your time talking about how none of your recipes taste good, then
nothing works, help me.
I'm really actually suck and I never get timing right. So buy my recipes where I put the timestamps on. You're just like, what? There's like a disconnect here that we're not seeing. I also think there is a little bit of self-indulgence happening. And I'm guilty of this too. I think anyone who is in this space, like, again, that thin line between, I want self-expression and I need to be taken seriously as a leader, like, it is a thin line. And I love the prompt. Actually, Hillary, you gave one of my hot seats. I think it was during Ignition or one of my writing workshops. I can't actually remember which one it was. Someone was asking you this question and you just looked at them and said, well, what do your people need to hear? Like, that was the prompt. And I think if you're wondering how to share or when to share or why to share, it all comes back down to like, what is the purpose it serves? Like, does this serve the end user? So there's a lot of stories that I have written that live in a draft folder because they're not really relevant to my audience right now. They might be in a couple of years, but I don't need them to see it right now. It's not relevant to the direction I'm going in my business. I might stick them in a book. I could use them somewhere else, but this need for immediacy to tell you everything on my mind right now, I actually think that's a red flag for when you shouldn't share.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's a bright red flag. And I would say too that it's easy to get confused when you're hearing good feedback from people about a radically vulnerable post, quote unquote, and actually something that's valuable. And I think that it is easy to get it mixed up being like, oh, people want more of this from me. I want to be transparent. And I had this experience earlier in my career, and I've told the story once or twice on the show, so I'm going to tell it again. Where I was launching my course, The Word Shops, and it was like the night before launch started, and I was super fried. And I remember getting on Instagram stories and being like, this scares the shit out of me. This has been so hard. I'm excited, but holy shit, guys, like, this has been pushing a boulder up a hill. And I got a message I got a DM from my coach at the time who was like, don't delete this. And I was like, excuse me? And she was like, people don't want to see, like, they want to see the end result. They want to be wowed by you. They don't want to know that you're struggling. Don't let them see you sweat. Like, and I remember her words were, give them the fantasy, baby. And at the time, I was like, no, this is wrong. Like, I believe in transparency. Like, I think people should know that this is difficult. Like, I stand by what I said. And as years have gone by, a part of me has been like, well, fuck. Because she's fucking right. Because if I think about it, like, the recent investment in my coach was $20K, right? And I'm working with this woman and she's awesome. But if, the day after I had invested in her, she did a story being like, I've been crying every day and we're losing sales. Yeah, exactly. We're losing sales. It's been a terrible year. I would have been like, I feel for you and I love you and you're amazing. But at this time, what I would like is to be working with somebody who I feel inspired by, somebody who I feel is going to be able to show me the way. And that tends to be, I think, the difference. It creates that. I don't think it's going to turn everybody off from you and make people feel like you're wholly incompetent. I don't think that's necessarily the case at all. When we think about the responsibility we have to the people that we serve and the people that we lead and the people who look to us for information, for encouragement, for support, for direction, we owe it to them not to spill our guts on social media all the time and be vomiting up emotionally. And it's not to go full stiff upper lip British with it, but frankly, your people aren't prepared to hold that space for you, and it's not their responsibility. So I think that this is, as you were saying, Margot, about the small circle. Like if you need to spill your guts, go to your group chat. Like don't go to Instagram now, because people, while it might be interesting to see behind the scenes, it might be a cathartic release for you, and similarly a cathartic release for anybody reading. If you're not in the business of cathartic release, rethink it.
Yeah, but like that's such an important point though, because there are some people who are in that business. Like we've talked about certain writers who their entire brand is oversharing. Is oversharing, but like they're not then coming in being like, let me life coach you, right? So I think that there's a line, like if you're selling books and speaking and people are paying for your perspective, even then, like there's still a line, but go in eyes open, knowing that there are consequences. Like don't expect that when you overshare that you're going to be met with love, or that the love is the same as sales. So like I get so much response when I share, like when I share something a little personal, but those people don't buy. I don't get the same response when I do like a sales pitch. So like we train our audiences how to respond to us, right? We have to be more deliberate about what our relationship is with them. And I think this point that you made really is important, that like your audience is not your friends, and there needs to be lines between the two. And that's not a demotion. It's just a difference, in the same way your mom is not your dad. Like, they are different, and they're qualitatively different, and that's okay. There's a time and a place, and I think it takes a lot of self-awareness to know what those lines are. And sometimes you have to violate those boundaries to figure out where they are. 100%. But I want to make it really clear that we are not talking about deception, because I can hear my clients, for sure, my coaching clients being like, this feels inauthentic. It just feels like it's not really me, and I'm really suffering right now, and they should know that I am not who I say I am. And I'm like, first of all, you are who you say you are. And if you're not, like, let's distinguish between imposter syndrome and deceiving your fucking audience.
And y'all
like,
are dramatic,
those are not the
too.
same. Those are not the same. But that's where the voices go if you don't voice them. So like, I get it. I totally get it. But there's a great conversation. If you guys listen to Armchair Expert, I'm a big fan of Dax Shepard, and he was interviewing Liz Gilbert, and she was saying how she was about to get up on stage in front of 20,000 people with Oprah in the front row. And she, for the first time, was getting like jitters, like physically was like this. And she had a conversation with herself. She was like, this is not the moment to be afraid. Like, this is the moment to show up, because part of what her speech was about was females specifically like being relaxed.
The irony.
And she was like, right. And so Dax pushed back, and he goes, well, wouldn't you be more vulnerable and powerful with the audience if you're like, I'm afraid right now. I'm scared and I'm uncomfortable and I'm human. And she was like, I mean, I guess you can make that argument, but that wasn't my point. It's a derailment from what I was trying to do. So again, it requires clarity of what you're trying to do. Sometimes it's the right thing to like point at the elephant in the room and be like, this is weird, right, y'all? This is weird. Right? Like sometimes that's okay.
This giant fucking elephant. And I think that you pointed that out too, where it's like the first rule of public speaking, that you never get on stage and talk about how nervous you are, or how your palms are sweating, or how or apologize, because that's all anyone remembers for the rest of the talk.
Yeah.
It's easy to fall into a pattern of, especially if you get the most engagement on those like radical vulnerability posts, which again, don't always equate into sales. But I think that it's easy to get misled being like, well, this is clearly the depth of the conversation. Like this is the most potent and powerful thing I can share. And it's just not true.
That's right.
Honestly, I think overall, the most potent and powerful thing you can share is reflections on those moments after you've healed from them. So you can actually share a lesson and value with people versus just venting.
Yes. And like, I think this goes back to, we did an episode on turning pro, but this really is relevant here, that context matters.
Yeah.
Knowing who your audience is, what you're sharing, where you're sharing, why you're sharing. If someone is paying you for a service, you do have an obligation and a duty to show up in a certain way.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean be inauthentic. That doesn't mean lie. That doesn't mean deceit. That doesn't mean pretend to be something you're not. It means find something true and have boundaries. Like my fight with my husband is not relevant to HAMYAW right now. If I came in and I was like, y'all, like, I know we're talking about inappropriate disclosure, but like right now I'm so overwhelmed because my husband said this dumb thing and he was freaking out. And I just feel like I'm not going to be able to show up authentically in this conversation unless you know. And it's like, no, girl, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Like that is the kind of thing where you can diary about it. You can get it out. You call your girlfriends. There's a whole podcast named that. But here's the thing. There's a very big difference between your diary, your girlfriends, and your audience and your business. Yeah. So again, I think it rests on the clarity of the distinction between the two and really challenging yourself on what it means to be authentic, because I think we try so hard to be seen and wanting to show up in a certain way in the world. And a lot of that can be done not publicly. Like you can share your process later. You don't need to share it while you're going through it in a way that makes you so raw and open that people can literally poke you and you'll fall out of the sky.
Yep.
There's a colleague I know who was sharing this story publicly as a bragging point, where she was sharing that women who were signing up for $20,000 a head, much like you, they show up the first day and the woman full on has a breakdown, centers on herself, makes the entire thing about her. And she tells the story as if it deepened connection. But I'm telling you right now, you spend that kind of cash. Like, first of all, you're doing gymnastics in your head to justify that money. Yeah. Number two, your first reaction is anger. Like you are not there to support her. That's not how this exchange works.
Yes.
That's like, you know how teachers are like, I learned more from my students. It's a metaphor, y'all. The teacher is teaching.
I love that you talk about it in terms of exchange as well. And I think that's ultimately what this comes down to as well. Is your audience there to catch you and catch your verbal vomit in their hands? Probably not. You know, they're following you for different reasons, and the exchange actually goes the other way, where you're there to pour into them. And of course they can give you support, and of course they can cheer you on. And of course, again, if it feels good to have a vulnerable moment and have positive response, that's not a bad thing. But you have to think about this in terms of exchange. Are people coming to you to watch your health go up and down and struggle with you? Or are they there to be inspired by you? Are they there to be led by you? Are they there to be taught? That's a very important thing to keep in mind.
Totally. And we'll end on this note that, like, would you be reacting this way if you were text messaging people? Like, there's something about the broadcast format that allows us to like abdicate responsibility somehow. And we feel that, like what you were saying about catharsis, it's a cleansing. I'm announcing and I'm releasing, you know, as the woo-woo folks say. But like, really, that's a moment to take this thing and you text Hillary, and you give her your verbal vomit. And then she's like, yeah, maybe don't put that on Instagram.
Yep. It's happened more times than I can count, folks. Let me tell you. Not me texting Margot. Like, I just feel like this. She's like, okay, well, maybe we do an episode on that in like 2 months, and then you can fucking relax. But again, like, you have to figure out where the line is for you. There's so much that goes into this, folks. It really is thinking about the kind of leader that you want to be, thinking about the kind of exchange you want with your audience, thinking about the kind of experience you want to offer them, and what vulnerability looks like safely. For you. What are the boundaries you need to hold based on how you want to be showing up, how you want people to trust you, and how you want to relate?
Vulnerability does not exist without boundaries. So take some time for self-examination, look at what your boundaries are, where you want to show up, and do the hard work. Because if it feels like catharsis, that's not vulnerability. Amen. Vulnerability is going to be hard, and it's one-on-one. It is showing up in a way where you're still leading, but you are opening yourself up to people who've earned the right, not simply to the world. Yes. So if 100%. You want to go deeper on this, I highly recommend Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. She has some wonderful, more specific examples, and she is actually the expert on this. I'll close out with this great line from, I think it's again, Liz Gilbert, but she was talking to a woman who was feeling all of these things. Like, I have all these things that need to be written, but I feel like it's inappropriate and it's going to hurt people's feelings. And I have to get it out. And she was like, girl, get it out. But just because it needs to be written doesn't mean it needs to be published.
Yes, amen.
So write to your heart's delight and keep it in your draft folder.
And on that note,
I am Margot Aaron.
And I'm Hillary Weiss.
If you liked this episode, please like it below, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Tell us, what has your experience been with inappropriate disclosure? What did you learn? How have you set boundaries as a result, or where have you not? Tell us all the things in the comments below, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.
Bye for now, guys.